All right. This is our last day of Ignite. Thanks so much for everybody who stuck with us through it. We got 3 people online right now and people here in class. Might have some more dripping in shortly. It's been a great week. I know it's been crazy 2-3 weeks actually.
Oh, yes.
And so, like I said, as I've said every session so far, we understand that because of what happened with the snow and the weather, it was tough to do this activities as much as y'all want to. But as I've said every single time, it's more important what you can do going forward. These are the activities you should be doing on a regular basis. So if you weren't able to do everything you should have been doing, now you know what you should be doing going forward. Seeing the houses, making the phone calls, writing the notes, doing the Popeyes, doing the activities that you've learned through this last 10 sessions, 2 more today, and Sheila's going to wrap it all up as far as say, hey, how you blast off out of here. So this is where you're going to be doing your activities on a regular basis. So without any further ado, we'll turn over to Sheila. She's going to be doing sessions 11 and 12. So for those online, when you go on your student resources, 11 and 12, and she's going to let you know when she switches sessions. But starting off in session 11, close the deal, and then after that, we blast off. And here's Ms. Sheila.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome, guys. So today we're actually doing a fun session. It's called Close the Deal. In my opinion, it's probably one of the most important sessions because it goes through the checklist of what do I do now that I have a client and I've put them under contract, and what are the expectations, one from the client, what are the expectations from them to me and from me to them, and then my lender and my title company and everybody else. Yep. Thank you. Hold on, I got it. Get out. Okay. So get your head in the game. So we are on page 11. All right. So there are 3 things that you have to make sure that happens for your contract to be successful, to get it to the closing table. One is to close on time. Now I'm going to tell you that closing on time doesn't always happen. But what happens around your dialogue with your client about closing is more important. So when I write a contract with a buyer or when I list a house with a seller, I say to them, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, although we're putting in closing on February 10th, 2018, that date is not in stone. Something could happen along the way, like your lending process, there could be a bump in the road with the appraiser, negotiation for the home inspection, whatever the case may be, which might require us to push that date to another closing date. So just be aware that could happen. On the listing side, I would have that conversation with my sellers, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Although a buyer is going to tell you they're closing on, February 18th, that doesn't necessarily mean that's when they're going to close. That's when we're hoping that they're going to close. But let's be a little bit flexible in case something happens, in case we have to push that date. The next thing you want is obviously a smooth process. What do you think helps a smooth process? What's the one thing that helps a smooth process? Miss Renee.
Communication, baby!
Amen, sister. It's the number one thing that helps the process to be smooth. That's communication when you have something to say and communication when you don't have something to say. If you haven't heard anything, back about the title work, and your client is wondering about it, it's an email that says, I haven't heard anything yet from the title company about the title being clear. I'm still working on it. I'll let you have an update as soon as I have one. The same thing between 2 agents. One of the biggest frustrations I have when agents come into my office is they sit across the table from me and tell me how the other agent does not respond to them. Can you agree to that, right? Seriously, if you have nothing to say, then say, I don't have an answer from the seller or the buyer yet. I am still waiting. I'll update you again tomorrow because they're doing the best they can, just like you're doing the best you can. And the most important of the 3 is win future business. If you go through an entire transaction and didn't ask for a referral, you probably have lost a golden opportunity to get future business from the person who actually likes you that you just helped close a deal. If you feel like the deal went south or went bad and you don't feel like you should ask for a referral, my suggestion is ask how they thought the transaction went and ask them for feedback on what you could do better in the future. It's okay to ask that. It's actually a really smart thing to do. So I'm going to get through 2 sessions today in less than 2 hours. So we're not going to do some of the fill-ins. So go to page 12, and you can see where we are on the funnel. We're at contracts and then close, which is your payday. Oh, my little thing went away. I don't know who just came, but hello. So before your client can know the process and how it's supposed to go and how you're supposed to help make it a smooth process, you need to know what the process is. So for those of you who are not aware, we have something in our office that's called Steps to Settlement, and this is buying a home, listing a home. And they're pretty little documents that go through the whole process, step by step, and tell you what's going to happen through the steps. If you would like to get a copy of this, I'd be more than happy to give you one. We have them, you can get them from Debbie. I think they're like $1 a piece. They're very thick, they're very heavy. They're something that, you know, is important for your buyer presentation and your listing presentation. And when you're standing in front of a seller or a buyer and you're not sure what to say, all you need to do is follow the little boxes. We kind of made it easy for you. So you can make this a pretty big part of your listing presentation or your buyer presentation. So those are important. So you need to know what the steps are, and we're going to go over the steps today. So there are people that are involved in the transaction with you. Page 12, that's where I am. Okay. That's the quote at the bottom. So the people that are involved in the transaction are going to be the buyer, the seller, the selling agent, the listing agent. Some people get a little confused because they choose to use the word selling agent instead of buyer's agent. I would just prefer they would just say the listing agent and the buyer's agent, but here they tend to use selling agent a lot. That means the buyer's agent. Your lender, the title company, the MCA in the market center, somebody that's going to be part of the transaction because you're going to do your green sheet. Any attorneys if you need them. If you have a third party, if it's a short sale foreclosure, there's always a bank involved. So there could be several different parties to the transaction. A family member, if somebody's getting a gift for their down payment. If I could teach you to be a really awesome real estate agent, and if I could find one characteristic that is going to set you apart from every other agent, if you had the problem-solving skill, if you could solve problems, you will be very successful in this business. If every problem you have becomes a catastrophe and the sky is falling, you are going to struggle in this business because every single closing has a bump, a bruise, a problem, agreed or not, right? Everyone. So the first thing that you have to understand is you can get through it, or if you don't, it wasn't meant to be for your client one way or the other, and they might be better off either not selling or not buying. But you have to figure out, how can I make this work? And it's not always going to instinctively come to you as a newer agent because you don't always know how it can work. So go to the people who like to do that. I went somewhere over the weekend and they asked a question, and what was your special talent? And my special talent in my mind, it might not be my real special talent, but in my mind, it was problem solving, because I always find a way to figure something out, to stay within the boundaries, to stay in the legal side of things, and yet make it feasible for all parties. And so if you could become a problem solver, that's really important. The other thing is obviously communication, like Renee said, is really key. But here's another thing. Stay out of the chaos of the transaction. The transaction itself is chaotic. The buyer has feelings, the seller has feelings if they haven't, let go of that emotional attachment. The listing agent has feelings, you have feelings. You might not agree with the lender's feelings or the title company's feelings, but everybody's got something in there that can cause some chaos and whirlwind. You're going to get sucked right into it if you allow it to happen. So you have to stop the chaos, and that starts with you. So it doesn't say that in the book, but that's one of my things I wanted to remind you guys. So go to page 14 when it talks about the contract to close process. And so according to the book, this says, it's state to state. But this is pretty much how our contract to close goes. So you have an offer. It either gets accepted or rejected, or it gets a counter offer. Once it gets accepted, your next step is an inspection. Your inspection, you either get it accepted, rejected, or you're going to negotiate back something. And the next one is a clear title. The only thing I felt that you might not see the clear title this early. Sometimes you see it a little bit further down. But clear title, and then your loan, underwritten, loan funded, or rejected. Other escrow instructions, that would be closing instructions. Closing disclosures, closing, funds transfer, so that would be the funds from the lender to the title company, not to you. Legal recording, and then owner possession. And after legal recording is when they will process the checks. And so that kind of goes through on page 15, the basic steps. So obviously, before you can get anywhere, what do you have to have? An offer. Without the offer, you're not getting to any of the other steps. Remember something when you're negotiating offers. Your deal, your job is to get the house sold for the seller or find the house that the buyer wants that fulfills their needs. Your job is not to stand on the last $500 that's stopping this deal going forward on principle. I've seen a lot of agents, because they want to get the best deal for their client, they lose the deal for their client. And in my opinion, maybe you lost the house that they really needed or really wanted or fit all their needs, and they're not going to find that next great house because you convinced them to walk away for $500. So be a facilitator and not the one that has to win the deal and be the better negotiator. Acceptance. So all parties have to accept the contract. And when does acceptance happen? When all terms are agreed upon and the very last person signs it, and it is delivered back to wherever the delivery address is in the contract. So if it says to the agent, then it's when it's delivered to the agent. If the agent put the buyer's information in there or the seller's information in there, then it's when it's delivered back to them. So just be careful, because ratification happens at the last step. So a lot of agents want to write that ratification date in there. Oh, we're ratified. My clients just signed it. You didn't send it back to the seller yet, so the seller doesn't actually know it's ratified. Let the listing agent put the ratification date on, because when she delivers it, it's ratified. It's not ratified until then. Counter offers. So when you have a counter offer to the contract, you're negotiating different terms. And can you counter back and forth several times? Yes. Is it annoying? Somewhat. My suggestion, what I do is, again, all offers are not actually deemed an offer until it's in writing, but to stop the back and forth of I got to get my client signed 100 times. You got to sign 100 times. I'll do a verbal with the listing agent or the buyer's agent and say, okay, the sellers say this is their counter offer. Will you guys accept those terms? They tell me no. We want to counter back on closing costs. Okay, let me find out from the seller, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now we settled on the terms. Buyer's agent, write it up, or I'll write it up. We'll make the changes, sign it, and send it over. Now, again, remember something. While you're in the countering state, there is no contract. So if another offer comes in, you could lose this deal. And in the hot market, it happens all the time. And so make sure your clients are very well aware of the fact that time is of the essence with this. Rejection. So the seller says that they're not going to pursue the offer any further, or the buyer rejects. As soon as a counter offer is made, either party can walk. If the buyer submits an offer and the seller doesn't choose to accept it, the buyer is off the hook. So is the seller. But the minute they all accept it, then there's no backing out, except for contingency purposes. Inspections. So if I could teach you something, I would like to teach you the fact that, guess what? You're going to hire a home inspector that's going to cost somewhere in the range of $350 to $450. And guess what you're paying them for? To find things wrong with the house. So explain to your seller up front that their perfect, wonderful house that they just renovated is got something wrong with it somewhere, that the home inspector is going to find, and a buyer is going to ask for it. So when I do my seller net sheets, I always put in repair costs. Always, always. Depending on how I feel when I walk around and I look at the house, I'll determine what I put in there. But even if it's just $3,000, even if it's $2,000, I don't care. The buyer is asking for something. In a hot seller's market, you might not negotiate as much, but you're still going to give something, I guarantee it. So the other thing, let's flip over to the buy side now. For the buyer, make sure that you explain to the buyer that there are certain things that are typical that a home inspector is going to find. They're going to find some probably lifted flashing around the chimney on the roof. They might find nail pops in the roof. They might find the dishwasher is not adhered to underneath the countertop. Polarity in the outlets are backwards. There's not enough insulation in the attic. You know, these are things that are very real, and probably if you took 10 home inspection reports and laid them across the table, you can find certain items on every single one of them, hands down, without a doubt. But bring that up to your client, because some of these things are not a big deal. And when they see a lot of things on the report, they go, oh my gosh, there's so much wrong with this house. There's 20 items. But if you address 10 of them before you ever got to the home inspection, well, 10 aren't so bad, and maybe 5 of them the seller is going to fix, and the other 5 are small, right? And so you solved the problem before the problem actually happened. So be proactive. Don't downplay something that is important, though. So if there's mold, if there's a water issue, if something is leaking, if the foundation is cracked more than 1/4 of an inch, if there's some really viable reason why they might not want to buy this house, get a contractor out there that's not the home inspector to be able to give them information on why they should buy the house or why they shouldn't buy the house. One of the most important things, and I see this all the time, guys, all the time, please, I want you to have a calendar with all the dates on it of when your home inspection contingency is up. Do not let it run out, right or wrong, right? Because then there's no negotiating. The seller could if they choose, but they don't have to. And the buyer just maybe lost a way to get out of the contract because you missed a date. So make a calendar for yourself with what the dates are: your closing date, your home inspection date, your home inspection removal date, your financing contingency date, your appraisal date. All of those dates you should know so you're aware of them. Clear title. the title company is going to tell you if you don't have a clear title. I will tell you, as a listing agent, and I know this sounds crazy, as a listing agent, I would run title up front. I always ran title when I listed a house. One, because I wanted to know, were there any problems that were going to surprise me in the end, and was I going to waste a lot of money and time on this client that they didn't know might be on the property, or did they know and forget to tell me? And two, then the title work that has to be done is from the day of that I ran the title till closing, which is nothing. So you know that you've got a clean title. I have the title company run title for me.
So does that cost you something?
So it depends. So some title companies will run it for you up front, knowing that they're going to get the business when you sell the house. And in a market when it's hot like this, chances are when you're seasoned enough to know what you're doing and you sell houses, the title company is going to say, yeah, I'll run it up front. We're going to charge it at the closing anyhow, right? So it's just, I use universal title. David will do that for you if you want to do that. That's not an issue. Again, before you ask him to do that, let me walk you through to make sure we got the house price right, motivation is there, and all the other things, because if it doesn't close, then the seller's going to get a bill for like $150 to run title, or whatever $350. I forget what the amount is. The last one, loan underwritten and funded. So I get a lot of agents that have this kind of feeling in their head. Oh, well, they're with the lender. That's the lender's job. No. It's your job to get that house to closing, get those buyers to closing, or get that seller to closing. So it's also your job to make sure the lender's doing their job. And you could do it in a very nice way. I always call a lender, if I'm a listing agent, I call the lender. I ask them how strong is the approval letter that they gave. And do they feel like there'll be any issues? Do they have to answer you? Not necessarily. Will they answer you? Yeah, they want a smooth deal. And then I continually follow up once a week. How are we doing? Do you need anything? Can I help you? If it's my buyer, I'm following up on an even more consistent basis, because I found that a lot of the times I was a big part of the push as to why it got to the closing table, because either the processor wasn't processing fast or they missed a document. If you're up on what needs to be done, it's always the same thing. They need tax returns, bank statements, verification of employment, application done. They might need a letter explaining something. You just got to keep on top of it. If you keep on top of the lender, they appreciate it. They're not bothered by it.
Right.
Yep.
So, I mean, in the last, 15, 20 years, we've got this process of pre-approval.
Yep.
You know, so out of the entire money part of the deal, how much is left after somebody is pre-approved?
Okay, so there's
Not pre-qualified, but pre-approved.
Okay, so pre-qualified means that they've told me some things, and based off of what they've told me, I run their credit, and I think that they're going to be okay. Pre-approval means they've shown me some documents, and based off of what I've seen, I think this loan is going to be good. Loan commitment is the key, because now they know what you need to supply, what's missing, and now they've underwritten all the documents and said, you know what, this is a good loan, and as long as we have this, this, and this, we're fine. So pre-approval is, it's only as good as the lender that's sitting across the table from you. If you have a lender that you trust and that you know when they say this person is pre-approved, you're getting to the closing table, or if you have a lender that's sitting across the table from you that has a good fallout rate, or they don't get them to the closing table, then I don't know how good that pre-approval is, right? So it's really only as good as the lender is, which makes it hard. I had a lender partner, he's the only person I did business with for 10 years, more 8.5. And if he said to me, they're good, we got to the closing table. It just didn't, it was his word was his bond, and I believed what he said. So you have to find somebody that you feel that way about. Again, on the other side of the transaction, as a listing agent, all bets are off if you don't know the lender, right? Page 16. So escrow instructions, that would be like where's the funds wired to, where is your bank information, where is it coming from, closing disclosures. Now be careful, because with the closing disclosures, if they have to redisclose, they have to have 3 days in which to redisclose before you can actually close. So be careful that you have enough time for your disclosures before closing. Closing is when they sit down and they actually sign the documents. When you guys do boot camp, you will do a mock closing. So you will sit with David Robertson, and he's going to show you how to do a closing on the buy side and how it happens on the seller side. Seller side's really easy. Yeah, it's really easy. And then recording in possession. And that's when the title company brings the documents down to the courthouse, or now I think they can do it online. It's stamped, it's good, they've received it, and then the client can take possession. All right. I can't see my little thing because he hit it on me. Let me just take a quick look and make sure nobody has any questions. If you guys got questions, start typing. Hold on. X in the red box atop. There we go. No? That one?
Well, that is what was covering up any message bubble, but we didn't hear the little chirp thing, so.
Oh. Okay. Well, you guys can talk. If you have a question, speak up. Speak up or speak out. All right. Systems equal success. Page 17. At first, your first transaction, you might feel all over the place. My suggestion is go to somebody who's done this before that uses a checklist. This all becomes very clear when you know what to do, when to do it, in what order to do it. And for me, I had checklists for everything. I had checklists for my checklists. But it really does become super clear when you use a checklist. And so remember, communication is your job. And I mean that. What I find happens is when agents get frightened about a situation, or they don't know how to handle it, or they don't know what to say, they stop communicating altogether. And what do I mean by that? So the home inspection comes back and it's got an issue about mold, and you're a new agent, and you don't know how to answer that question to your client when your client says, what do we do? It's got mold. And so you don't answer the client. And it goes on for a day, and the client's like, hello, what do we do? It has mold. What do we do? And you're still not sure, and you're searching and reaching for an answer from somebody, and somebody hasn't answered you. Literally, you can walk through this office, you can send an email, I'm having a mold issue, can somebody help me out with how to remedy it? Somebody will help you, walk you through it. I'm available. Steve likes to vacation a lot, so he's in Hawaii right now, but he is available most of the time, although he's been taking a lot of calls, so there's always somebody. Find out, because the lack of communication frightens your client, which will have a ripple effect through the transaction. And I don't know that sometimes they have difficulty recovering when they feel like they've been left out there. So communicate to your client. That's really, really important. So page 18, we're going to go through the buyer agent contract to close list. And some of the things that are on here are something that, we might do here, but this is like a general list. And so on the task side, submit the contract and earnest money to the title escrow company. I prefer that you give it to the title company all day long. In this state, it if you see deliver earnest money to the listing agent as the second one, well, in this state, it's to the buyer agent firm. I prefer, I repeat, for it to go to the to the title company. I also prefer, because I can reach out, touch them, and strangle them if I need to, universal title. It's really easy to be aware of what's going on in a transaction when you can walk across the courtyard and stand in front of them and say, tell me what's going on with the transaction.
Refresh my memory, if you will. In Virginia, who has the right to choose the title company? It's the buyer, right?
Yes. Okay. Great question. There is a paragraph in the contract with big bold letters about this thick that says the buyer has the right to choose the title company, and the seller cannot have, and as far as the wording goes, I'm not sure like the exact wording. The seller cannot make a title company choice contingent upon whether or not the contract is accepted. Okay, so you'll see the listing agent will say, yeah, we want to use XYZ title company, or it's listed in the agent remarks in the MLS. It doesn't matter what it says. It's what the buyer wants. Can it make the deal easier sometimes to use their title company? Yes, in some instances it can. But you can have a split settlement. So the buyer can settle here, and the seller can settle. It's just, it didn't work. It didn't happen with anybody else. And there's nobody else in this room. I'm starting to think that it's just me. Hold on, I got to move the microphone. Can you hear me? I think they can. And so the seller can close one place. Oh, I think, did I screw it up because I took off the, can I not use this now? Then played with the, hold on, Dennis is going to go see if he can fix my clicker. There it is, fixed. Yeah, I'm not very good at the clicker thing. Okay. Okay, there we are. So they can settle at different places. Schedule structural and termite inspections, arrange geological and other inspections if needed. Obtain loan approval in writing. Negotiate for repairs and treatment. Schedule a survey. Most of the time the title company will ask if you want a survey. Schedule appraisal, or just ensure that it's been scheduled. Schedule a closing appointment if necessary. Final walkthrough with buyer. Oh, on the final walkthrough, when you negotiate repairs that are minor, then you could do a walkthrough the day before. When you're negotiating repairs that are something that would have been a deal breaker, or something that really needs to be fixed, you need to do a walkthrough 2 or 3 days before closing. But you need to make sure that when you do your home inspection removal contingency and you ask for the repairs, tell them that you want all repairs completed 3 days before closing for re-inspect. You can ask a home inspector to go and re-inspect you. You have to pay for it. Or you can go out there. Now remember, sometimes some of these things are in an attic. So if you're going to verify if it got done, you're going to need a ladder to get up there to see that it's been done. If you pay, I want to say the re-inspect fee is $100, $150 for a home inspector to go back and re-inspect. If it's substantial damage and it's something that you're not going to be able to see or know if it was even done right, let the home inspector do it. But do that several days before closing. And then you're going to also make sure that you actually have a very quick walkthrough right before closing. Because what you're going to want to verify that at that moment is, did anything happen to the house? Was there a storm and a tree fell on the roof? Was the toilet bowl flushed and it got stuck and it overflowed? Or they moved out their stuff and guess what? There's a big stain in the middle of the carpet underneath the couch that I couldn't see before. The movers put a hole in the wall. So those are smaller items that get addressed. Sorry, guys. I know those are smaller items that can get addressed. That's why you can do that much closer to closing. Because once your clients sign on the dotted line, the house belongs to them with all of its boo-boos, even if they just appeared. Let's see, coordinate move-in dates, confirm don't forget, if you're on the buy side, make sure the buyer sets up electric, gas, water, whatever utilities need to be for the house prior to closing so that it takes effect. I usually say the day before closing. And the reason I say that is because somehow, some way, the seller always turns it off, and sometimes it happens they turn it off a day too early. And if you set it up for it to start a day early, then you never worry about it. Because you can't do a walkthrough without the utilities on. Let's see. Confirm the loan will fund on time for closing. Have the client review the closing disclosure. Attend closing. For a buyer, you should absolutely attend closing. Sometimes the sellers are going ahead of time and just signing their documents. I don't know on the seller side if it's as important for you, but if you can, do it. But definitely on the buy side, because that's time of excitement. They're all excited. They're buying their house. Yeah, absolutely. I think on the buy side, it's way more important than the seller side. Because again, the seller is walking in there, they're doing the settlement statement, they're signing one or two other disclosures and their bank information. So I don't know that it's as important on the seller side, but definitely on the buy side, without a doubt. And receive your payment from the title company. If you close with Universal Title, they bring checks over to us every day somewhere around, I don't know, 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then Debbie processes them. If she can do it right then and there, she does it. She funds them, and you'll get them in the next morning deposit in your bank account. Listing side, contract to close checklist. So I don't know what to do with this thing. Hold on a second. Let me see. So all the theories about it having to be a full room just went out the window. Okay? Just saying. Now I'm really starting to think that it's me, though. Anyhow. All right. Yeah, but it does. I don't know if it's happening with anybody else. This one? Then will you grab me the microphone? I can switch to the microphone. Awesome. There we go. Okay, open title. Submit contracts and earnest money to the title company. Do that right away as soon as you ratify a contract. Now remember, it's your responsibility as an agent to get the earnest money to wherever you designated in the contract, whether that's the title company or the office here, within the certain amount of time that it says in the contract. It could say 3 days, could say 5 days, but that's your time frame. Deliver earnest money to the title company or the escrow company. Coordinate inspections. Receive written confirmation on loan approval. Negotiate repairs and treatments. Schedule a survey. That's usually on the buy side. Ensure appraisal has been scheduled. Coordinate move-in dates. Schedule a closing appointment. Conduct final walkthrough, have client review closing disclosures, go to closing, and receive your payment. Those seem like the same as the seller side. Okay, page 20. No. Nope. And as a listing agent, I wouldn't be at the home inspection either. And please tell your sellers not to be at the home inspection. Please make them leave. That's the buyer's time to be with their home inspector and not feel uncomfortable that your sellers are following behind them, explaining everything that's going on. The less time a buyer and seller can be together, the better off you are. Because when a seller thinks they're doing you a favor by telling you about how they had the such and such fixed, oh, I fixed the roof, it was leaking. Well, you're not a contractor. You don't have a license. Did you do it right? Now you just open another whole other can of worms. So keep them apart, please, because they always think that they're helping and they are usually not. Be a problem solver, literally. Bumps are going to happen. Surprises, uh-ohs, they're all going to happen. Again, it's about handling the expectations up front. And so that's in your consultation, in your listing presentation or your buyer consultation. You want to talk about some deals don't always go so smoothly. I'm going to do my best to help you out in all situations, but we're going to expect some bumps or bruises along the way, and hopefully we're going to get sales straight through them. I've been doing it, usually I say I've been doing it long enough that I've been able to solve a problem pretty easily, or it's either not the house for you to buy or this is not the buyer for you and we'll find you another one. So let's talk about in different issues, what goes wrong and what are the solutions. So there's always something that comes on an inspection report, one that the seller probably doesn't agree with, that they think is garbage, because, you know, they had the perfect house and they kept it perfect and they did everything they were supposed to do, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something wrong with it. One of the things that you can do as a listing agent, which I find very, very useful and helpful, is get a home inspection up front. Let a home inspector come in and do the home inspection on the house, because now we have the opportunity to find out what's wrong with it. We have the opportunity to fix things, and you can even say to a buyer, guess what, we did a home inspection. We did it 3 weeks ago. We're more than happy to share it with you if you don't want to get a home inspection. As a buyer's agent, I would never take your home inspection. That's just how I would be as a buyer's agent, but that doesn't mean that a buyer's agent wouldn't take it. Dennis.
Okay, so you're the seller and you're advised to get a home inspection beforehand and it uncovers X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Are you then required to share that? Because
So,
it's no longer unknown.
right. The minute it becomes a material fact, now when you talk about the you, are you talking about the agent or the seller?
I'm talking about the selling side of the transaction.
Right. So are you talking about, is the seller required to disclose it or is the agent required to disclose it? Well, there's two different answers, that's why. So it's a buyer beware state. So the seller doesn't have to disclose anything, but they haven't, as long as they haven't told me, right? Again, so maybe I don't want to see the home inspection. Maybe I don't want to know. But here's the thing. We're not looking to do the wrong thing either. We're getting this for information purposes so that they know what their items are that they might want to fix ahead of time. And so when you tell them to get the home inspection, make sure you're telling them with the understanding that we're going to fix the items that they find. The majority of the ones that would be the deal breakers for people. Because somebody's going to find it anyhow. Better you find it up front and fix it than the, buyer's agent come in and find it and it's got structural damage and they walk away and every other buyer after that's going to walk away and now it's a material fact and we've got to disclose it anyhow. So you're fixing it regardless. So again, it goes back to expectations. As long as you tell them we're doing this with the purpose of fixing the things we find that need to be fixed, so that a buyer doesn't find it. And again, the buyer's still going to find stuff, right? They're going to find some little stuff, I'm sure. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Okay. So the report is complex or confusing, which happens, I think, a lot. One, a buyer has never probably seen this. If they're a new buyer, they've never seen a home inspection report. They don't know what's on it or what it looks like. And they can get very afraid of some of the things on it. So it's up to you to calm their nerves as long as you're fully aware of what it is that you're talking about, right? You are not a contractor and you're not an expert. So what you might want to say is, okay, so let's go get a contractor to get us a quote to see how bad that really is. And then that'll bring us right to costs and who pays. So it depends. But we don't know what to ask for if we don't know what the prices are. And so we have agents that will guess. I think that'll cost that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't ever guess. Find somebody to go out and look at the house and figure out what needs to be done. And then who pays? Well, it's a negotiation. So the seller could pay for some of it, or the seller maybe doesn't pay for some of it. If you negotiate something that is a credit, so in other words, the buyer and seller decide that they're not actually going to fix anything. The buyer is going to take a credit for $3,000 for the roof, and you write up an addendum that says seller to give buyer a $3,000 credit at closing. Please don't write in place of repairing roof, because any addendum has to go to the lender. And if it says in place of repairing the roof, the lender is going to say, we don't want that. We want the roof repaired. We don't want money for it. And two is be careful if the buyer's getting a credit that the credit is allowed by the lender, because they're only allowed to get so much subsidy from a seller before they've maxed out the amount they can get. And if it pushes them over, they're not going to be allowed to get it anyhow. So then they might want to ask for the repairs instead of the credit. Timetable for repairs, again, my suggestion is make sure that it's at least 3 days before closing, so you have ample time to check on the repairs. Doubt about worthiness for the inspections. A lot of sellers want to do the DIY thing, right? Because it's cheaper. But that's not what the contract says. The contract says that it has to be a licensed general contractor. And so what I would say as a buyer's agent, ask for the repair invoices. As a listing agent, supply them without being asked, because that's your duty as the agent to make sure that the repairs were done. So here it's a couple of days before closing, all the repairs have been complete. Here's the email from the listing agent to the buyer's agent. Hi, Sally, just wanted to let you know all the repairs that you requested on the home inspection, removal contingency, have all been completed. I've attached all the invoices for your records. Please supply them to the buyer so that they have them. In case anything goes wrong in the future, they can contact the contractor directly. Boom, done. Appraisals won't support the price. Whose problem is that? Everybody. Yes, it is. When the appraisal won't support the price, whose problem is that? It's everybody's. Two things happen. One, did the seller overprice the house, whether or not that was the listing agent who told him to overprice it or the seller who's demanding it be a certain price? Two, did the buyer's agent not do a CMA for the buyer to make sure that they were offering the correct amount? And it's not about blame, right? What I want you to hear from me is if the seller is picking the price, you better be very careful and tell them if it doesn't appraise, you're going to sell it for the price the appraiser said it was worth anyhow. Or on the buy side, if you just pick any willy-nilly number, like the sales price, how do you know that that's the right price? So you have to do a market analysis for your buyer to make sure that they're not overpaying for this house that they're buying. And if you don't know how to do any of those, by all means, come see me. I'll sit down and show you. I think did Tim show you guys how to do the CMA? He did, okay. They're not terribly hard. It's just a matter maybe of how to do it in the MRIS that might confuse you, but what you need to do shouldn't be too difficult. Right. Okay. So in that, yep, exactly. And so this is the conversation. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if the house only appraises for $500,000 and you're paying $510,000, do you realize that you're going to bring $10,000 to the table and the equity in the house is going to be negative? As long as you realize that, you're good. I can't tell you what the market will do the day after the appraisal, right? because the appraisal is only good for the day that it's done, right? And then the market can change at any time, but based off of the information that we have, right now you're in negative equity. Are you okay with that? As long as they understand it, then you've done your job. Will support the price, it won't support the loan. So if it doesn't support the loan, then maybe we might have to look at other loan options. And again, that might be something that is a conversation pre-buying a house when you're talking to them. You know, when they want to go FHA and they have 3.5% down. If this didn't work out and we had to do conventional for 5%, do you have the difference? Right? So it's just a conversation. And it doesn't match the CMA, appeal the appraisal. Not too many appraisers move their appraisal price unless the times that I've seen it happen is when an appraiser is not from this area. And so they're kind of appraising blindly, if you will. They're coming into this area not knowing the market as well as maybe, you know, Joe Schmo appraiser who does all his appraisals in Northern Virginia. Maybe this guy's from Fredericksburg, and he comes up and he does an appraisal. If you can really show him good comps that show that he's wrong, he'll probably change the price. If this is his area and he does appraisals there all the time and he's, you know, the appraiser that, you know, knows what he's doing, they're not changing it. You can argue it, but they're not going to change it. Absolutely. Right. So what Dennis just said, for those of you who can't hear him, is he said you can be proactive and prepare a packet for the appraiser. And I'm going to just preface it with, do not be there explaining the comps to him. You could be there to let him in and hand it to him and just say, I have this for you if you want to take a look at it. Don't stand there and start explaining his job to him. You'll insult him. Or you can leave it on the counter. When you make the appointment, just say there'll be a packet on the counter for you with comps in it, right, of what your comps are. Just make sure you know what you're doing. Have somebody else look at them. Because if you're giving him the wrong comps, he's going to go, what is this agent doing? They don't even have the right comps. So, yeah. Well, you're not doing it to insult him. And so again, I don't know that I would necessarily be there to do it. I would probably leave it and tell him that I'm leaving him something there for him, a packet for him. I've done it several times. I've never, no, I shouldn't say I never. I did have one appraiser who thought he was God. Do you know what he actually said? He actually said, I have the power to control the price of the market. And I was like, dude, you don't have the power to do anything. The buyers have the power. Who's ever buying the house of all the houses around creates the market, not you. Seriously. Anyhow, sorry, off topic. The agent, the listing agent. Yeah, the listing agent. Because you want to make sure it makes value. That's very important because it's on you if it doesn't make value. Yeah. Yep.
And that was the case for the case I was talking about. The house has been completely renovated from top to bottom.
So what we were talking about is I recently sold a property in Alexandria, and the house had been completely renovated, and the price that had been offered for the property was a new territory for that market. So the listing agent that I engaged, a very formidable Keller Williams agent named Melinda Schnurr, put together a packet for the appraiser in which she documented all of the stuff that had been done to the house in terms of the renovation, as well as showing why this house was still worth more than anything else on the market. And the appraiser accepted it.
So I'm all saying that they did the renovation. So the contractor started work years ago, started to get approval from the county, didn't finish it. So there's open permits probably. Mm-hmm. But he didn't finish the work, so that's probably where. Oh, you finished the work then? So then get the inspection and let them close the permits, and then he's fine. Yeah. 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 So the county is obligated to do a final inspection on open permits, is what Dennis said. And there's a ton of houses that go on the market with things that are done to the house that's not been permitted, right? But as a buyer's agent, if it's not permitted, then what you need to make sure the buyer understands is that there is an open permit that has not been completed. It doesn't mean that we can't buy the house. You see that the work is done, but I don't know that it's to code. It hasn't been permitted. The minute you buy the house, it becomes your problem. So you can add that in there, but again, if you're talking work that's been done and it's okay, let's talk about a bedroom, right? So they added a bedroom in the basement, okay? And let's say in Fairfax County, because I'm going to go with the county regulation, if the bedroom does not have a closet, is it allowed to be a bedroom in Fairfax County? Yes, it is. Yes. Right. And no. But the window has to be at a minimum 36 inches from the floor to where you would actually be able to open the window or get out of the window. Right. Yeah. So you have to be careful. If they put the bedroom in the basement, they put a closet because that's what everybody thinks needs to be in there, which it doesn't. But they didn't put the window. It doesn't matter. The appraiser's not going to count it because it hasn't met the county regulation to be a bedroom. Okay, so let's go one step further. There's regulations on the bathroom. Is it properly ventilated? Is the ceiling high enough? If they met, now again, appraiser would need to know what the county regulations were, but if so I went into a house and they added a bathroom in the laundry room downstairs in the basement. And so the ceiling was maybe about 6'2". And it wasn't ventilated at all. They just cut out a box in the laundry room and put a bathroom in there and then ran the piping off of it. And so I knew it was never going to be able to be counted as a bathroom because it didn't hit any of the code. I mean, it should have been ripped out. So we couldn't count that as I think it was a four bath or 5 bath house. We couldn't count it that way. Well, again, like that one was obvious, so he's not going to say that's the bathroom that counts. He's not going to give it any value because it has no value. Yeah. Yeah. They're always going to pull an appraiser will always pull a tax record, just for verification purposes of like the legal address and stuff. And because they have it, and they have to put it with their file that they're doing, the tax card goes there. Most of them will glance at it, but they're smart enough to know that they don't match half the houses anyhow, right? So, great. So next we have loan approval and funding. I'm not going to go through all of those. I'm going to tell you that there are certain things that will deny a loan. One is a break in one of the major ones that I see is a break in employment. So there's not so somebody's got, let's say, 6 months where they went from one job to another, but the jobs are not related. They're not even in the same field, and sometimes they call that like a break of employment. Unless some underwriters will allow you to explain it, but it could, an FHA regulation is they don't like a break in employment like that. Overdrafts on your account, on your bank account, can be an issue. Latenesses, when they actually get your verification, let's say verification of rent, if you get a lateness, that could be a deal killer, unless you have a really good explanation as to why it was late. Let's see. Other contingencies: a sale of the buyer's home, taking a backup offer, short sale, relocation, or estate approval, or clouded title. Clouded title, what does that mean? You know? Clouded title. There's a defect on the title. Yep. Yeah. Somebody owed money. I actually saw one time where the previous seller to the current seller sold the house, and they didn't realize there were 2 people on title and only one signed. And then the second person had died. So they couldn't even then go back and get it rectified. And the estate wouldn't allow it to be sold. So it stopped this because they never got paid for half of the property that was rightfully theirs when the current seller bought it as the buyer. Yeah. So you got to be careful with title issues. That's why when you're the listing agent, if you get the title work done up front, then you don't run into these problems. Other agent, bad advice or communication. Remember something. The other agent telling you something means squat diddly. And I mean that. The other agent telling you something means nothing. So if the other agent tells you, oh, it's a regulation, or you have to do it this way, or blah, 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 come and ask your broker. Because I'm going to tell you, or Steve's going to tell you how it needs to be done. I had a listing agent on the other side call me up about a buyer agent in our office telling me that the buyer was very well aware of the fact that the seller wanted to use ABC Title Company. And I said to him, you do realize that the contract states that the buyer has the ability to decide who the title company is. He says, I know, but what I'm telling you is we advertised it saying, and I said, okay, this was a broker. This was an associate broker. I was blown away. And I said, and he was like, you're not doing the right thing by your client. And I said, no, I'm actually doing the exact right thing by our client. We're representing our client who has the choice to use whoever they want. Would the deal be easier if we used your title company, because it was a church selling many pieces of property, and it probably would have been legally, but that doesn't mean that you can demand that the contract is contingent upon us using your title company. I mean, it says in the contract in big letters. So just be careful, because that's what that agent was telling our agent. So if you have a question about what the agent on the other side of the transaction is telling you, please come ask me or Steve. We will tell you what we want you to do on our side. Now, there are 11,000 real estate agents in Northern Virginia. There are probably 2,000 that are worth a hoot. There are probably 500 that I would say are good. So that would leave you with 10,500 agents, not so great. So unfortunately, you're going to find agents on the other side of transactions that have no clue what they're doing, that you do their work for them and they get paid commission. These are some of the frustrations that are going to happen. Remember,
your due diligence is to your client. And if that means you have to do both sides of the transaction, then so be it. Suck it up, buttercup. Because you got to get your client to the closing table, right? It doesn't make for an easy transaction. It makes for a very frustrating one. And the hardest part, I'm going to ask you not to do this, is stop blaming the other agent for everything under the sun. Sometimes you need to just keep the waters calm, because when the poop hits the fan, if you've already got your client all riled up about the other agent, you might as well just kiss the deal goodbye. So don't do that to yourself. Deadlines. Make sure you always know what your deadlines are. Make sure you always know what your deadlines are. Write them down. Put them on your calendar. Write them down. Put them on your calendar. The easiest way to really do the wrong thing by your client is miss one of their dates. And I see agents do it all the time. I would say at least 2 or 3 agents a month come to me with problems because they missed a date. That's a lot. Okay, page 22, closing information. So important dates, a closing guide, which we have over here, and you can use them. Oh, remember, a copy of the contract has to be given back to your client. Why? Because there's no contract if the client doesn't have a copy of it. Buyer broker, listing agreement, contract. Remember, buyer broker and your listing agreement are contracts. Contracts between the broker and the client. Unless it's delivered back, so you go on a listing appointment, they sign the paperwork, you say, I have to have my broker sign it, I'll get you a copy back. You list the house. 2 months into it, they can't stand you, they don't like you, you return their phone calls, whatever you've done to upset them, and they call me up, and they say, I never got a copy of my contract. Guess what? Listing goes bye-bye. There's nothing I can do about it. If they do not receive a copy of the contract, there's not a valid contract. No, but you never want to hand it to them, right? You want to send it to them in an email. And delivery is all that is expected. If they gave you an email address that was their email address and you emailed it to them with it attached, delivery has happened. If they never opened it, that's their issue. You just have to prove that you delivered it. All right. All right, page 24. This is what I said before. Always ask for the referral, guys. You're really losing a prime opportunity if you let somebody walk away without asking for the referral. And I would start asking for the referral before they close, because that gives them time to. If you're asking for it at the closing table, if they don't think of somebody right then and there, you might be letting that opportunity go by. And then put them into your campaign. I'm going to give you a little hint. If you're listening, the buyer that bought my listing is going in my drip campaign. Always. If I'm a listing agent and I sold the house and I know who the buyer is on the other side, I obviously know where they live, they're all going on my drip campaign. I have their email address, it's in the contract. Because guess what? Their agent is not going to follow up with them. But I am. I'm going to follow up with them all the time. Unless an agent tells me not to. Because when does the buyer broker agreement end? When closing happens. There's no other obligation past closing. So I'm not violating any agency agreement if I talk to them. Okie dokie. All right, page 26. So ask for a testimonial from them. And the easiest way to do it is pull your phone out and say, would you mind if I took a really quick, 10-second recording of you talking about how you thought the transaction went? Hit record and let them have at it. Don't coach them what to say. Don't do anything. And start posting them on your business page, on your website, and you will start to get testimonials. When they love you, they love you. Obviously, if it was a bumpy transaction, you might not want to ask them to do it. But it shouldn't be a bumpy transaction because you're going to do what? Communicate. See, somebody learned something today. Woohoo! All right. Customer service focus. So remember, you want to make sure that that client that's sitting in front of you is not transactional. Because if they're transactional, then that means you're on to the next person and you don't care about them. If I can teach you how to build okay, sorry about that, guys. A sustainable business is by repeat clients or clients that refer you. And in order to do that, you have to give top-notch service, and Gary likes to call that wow service. So you want to wow your customer. And so at the beginning of the transaction, one of the ways that you can do that is ask them, what would I need to do in this transaction to make you feel really wowed? Let them tell you, and then just do what they tell you. Send them a thank you note. Please have a closing gift at the closing for a buyer. Please. Do something. Do something for them. A basket. We used to do baskets. Yeah. I always give it to them at the closing table. Yeah. You can. But the excitement happens at the closing table. That's when they have that rush, the butterflies in the stomach. They're really excited. Unless they're, veterans and they've bought several houses, then maybe not as exciting. But even the first couple of houses, it's still an exciting thing, and so I think it has the most impact then. What I used to do with my baskets is I would always get a couple things for the kitchen, like hand towels. I would get a picture frame, and if they had a family, it would say family on it. If it was just a husband and wife, it would say in love. If it was a single guy, I wouldn't put a picture frame in there. I did several, military, so you have guys that are unattached. I would put candles in there. If they had kids, I would put something that the kid liked in there. If they had a dog, I'd put something for the dog. But one thing I always put in there, and it just was my thing, I put something for their garden, for the yard. And I used to say to them, put this outside your front door. I love driving by houses that I've sold, and I love to see when I pass something that I gave you. And almost always, I could see it. And that was just for me. That was a selfish thing. Then over time, we would give away Cutco knives with our information on it, and everybody loved them. That was like one of the things. Like everybody was like, I love that knife. I love that knife. And it was a total write-off because it had our information on it. So definitely give a gift. Give something that's going to last, that they're going to see and use. If you give them a gift card, they're going to spend it and forget you. If you give them a bottle of wine, they're going to drink it and like you for the night. Yeah. Well, if you do it later on, you should be doing it as Popeyes, right? Yeah, you can do that. I mean, that's fine. I always did it at the closing table because and so sellers, I might give like a gift card or a dinner thing. The sellers, the house is gone. So I'm not giving them anything for the house because it's gone unless they sold them another house. And keep in touch. Obviously, you guys know that's a big thing in this office. Half of this office has built their business around relationships with people and making sure that they're constantly in touch with them. One of the other cute ideas that we did it for a very short period of time. We would do a housewarming party. So for my buyer's agents, they would put together whatever, they like the Mexican thing. That was like the girls' thing. They like to do the margaritas and the Mexican food. But what we had out front was a sign that said, we'd like to welcome to the neighborhood Mr. and Mrs. Jones. And it would have our logos and everything on it and our information. And a couple of days before closing, my girls would walk around to the block that the Joneses were going to be on, and there was a welcome card, and they asked all the homeowners to sign the welcome card to welcome the Joneses to the area they were going to be closing on Friday. And then we would pay for a new home party. What did I say? It was a minute ago. Housewarming party. Woo, buddy. A housewarming party. And we would ask them if we could send out the invitations to their friends. So we would get their friends' phone numbers, email addresses, and names, and they all went in our database. And so at the party, my girls would meet them and get to know who they were, and then they would start to get our drip campaigns right after that. And we didn't do it long enough. We did get 2 buyers out of it. They only did 3 parties, but it worked. Yeah, you gotta be creative. You gotta stand out from the crowd. And let me tell you something. I loved when people would see our sign that said, the neighborhood would like to welcome the Joneses. Nobody does that except us. So we had a sign just like our. So we didn't use the posts. We didn't use the posts. I used the signs that went with the metal frame. So we would just take the sign out and replace it with the welcome sign. No, it was a write-on. It was a write-on board. Dry erase? Yeah, dry erase. Thank you. Yeah, for the name. And so we would just erase the name. Like I said, we only did it 3 times, but it worked the 3 times. Just the name. Yeah, the Joneses or the Smiths or the Cuadros, whatever. Yep. So 29, 4, get paid. What do you have to do in this market center to get paid? Complete a green sheet. When do you have to do that? It should be before the closing. Amal's is never before the closing. I'm like, Amal, I have this check. If you want to get paid, you might want to put a green sheet in there. So please do the green sheet when you ratify a contract. I appreciate it. I mean, I do like the surprises every once in a while when we don't realize that we have the extra money coming in. But it's to the end of the month, and that's not fun. All right. Hold on, I lost my page. Stay with me here. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so now, page 30. So your action items, what do you need to do after you're done? Now you're done with the contract. You're done with the closing. So you're going to add the buyer, your buyer. If you're the seller, you better add the seller and the buyer to the contract database. Add whatever lenders were on the other side, whatever closing companies, right? Because you can always add them to your allied resources, right? Yeah, absolutely. Especially if they were good, or if they were, if your lender can't do something and you had a great lender on the other side, then, yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that I always did, so I did a client info sheet up front, always with my clients. And it had all information on it, like, everybody's name in the family, what's their age, their date of birth, animals. That was a big thing in Jacksonville, like, people's dogs and stuff. It's a big thing for me. So what kind of animals they had, what were their breeds, what were their favorite restaurants, their favorite sports teams, favorite colors. This way I could, when I got my basket, I can stay in theme with whatever they liked. And what else? Did I say the kid's date of birth? Oh, their anniversary, their wedding anniversary. And then when I got the client info sheet, the first thing I would do, I would put in the Google Calendar husband and wife's birthday, all the kids' birthdays. I would put in their wedding anniversary. And then when they closed, I put in their home anniversary. That gave me like 6 or 7 touches per year just saying happy birthday to them. So when you think about, oh, I have to write all these notes, it was easy. It was very easy. I just wrote them every day, happy birthday or whatever. There's nothing more exciting to a mom and dad than when their kid gets a handwritten card from a real estate agent. I remember the first, when we moved up here, and I didn't send it to like one of the families that I had been sending it to all those years. She called up and she said, is everything okay? Did something happen? Because Michaela didn't get a card from me this year. And I was like, I moved. I'm sorry, my fault. I felt so bad. I didn't want to say there's no reason for me to do that anymore. I'm only kidding. It's a joke. But I felt really bad. So make sure you have a follow-up plan. All right. We are going to head into our next chapter, our next session, which is really short. 12. Let's go all the way in. You should have a video from me, right? Awesome. Yep.
Hi, I'm Linda McKissick, and I'm going to talk to you about an ideal day in the life of a mega agent. First thing in the morning, I have to start with getting up and getting my head right. What I've discovered is if I get my head there, my body will show up. So that typically means getting up in the morning, always exercising, getting the blood flowing, and second, reading something either spiritual or motivational, or listening to an audio tape. Jim Rohn happens to be my favorite, so he's always in one of my CD players somewhere so that I can plug him in easily. And just listen to people that are inspirational, because I think all of us need hope every day to go do what we have to do. As we get to the office, the most important thing is, because every business is a lead generation business, is what does that lead generation look like? For me, because I'm at the 7th level, one of the most important things is, what key people do I need to talk with that day? And that always pops up first. Do they have what they need to succeed? And then the next thing is, who are the people we need to be doing business with? How have I communicated with them lately? What do I need to do now? Is it a phone call today? Is it a drip campaign? Is it an invitation to something? Looking for, how do I communicate with those people that we want to do business with, and how do I keep furthering that relationship and moving it along? I've discovered my business energy is highest earliest in the morning, earliest in the day, and earliest in the week. So I front load my week, Monday being the most difficult day with all the contacts and all the lead generation that I need to do early in the morning. And that frees me up to have the afternoon to kind of just work on plans or projects. Typically what I find is through the week, Monday and Tuesday are heavier, and Wednesday, and by Thursday and Friday it's pretty more entrepreneurial, of just off the cuff. And in the evening on Mondays or through the week is, it's always about family, because the reason we do what we do is so that we can build a great life and build great memories with our family. So our kids are very important to us. We're very involved. And it's, what are we going to do as a family? What do we need to do as a family? When's dinner? Where are we going to go? What are we going to eat? And that kind of rejuvenates me. One of my philosophies is, the purpose of business is to fund life. And to me, life is all about family. And as a mega agent, your day might look different, but the key things we have to always remember is, certain parts of our day have to look the same. So you might want to think about, where's my head? How can I get my head in the right place? And then we always want to remember that every business has to do lead generating. So what does your lead generation look like? Is it earliest in the morning? Is it earliest in the day? And then we always have to know that somewhere in the day we have to spend that quality time with family, because we don't want to win at business to lose at family. Thanks for watching KW Connect, and make it a great day.
All right, Dennis, what were your highs from that video? Since you're the only one that can talk back to me, can anybody else talk back to me? Talk to me, guys. Anybody online have an aha they want to talk about? Anybody online still paying attention? Dennis, it looks like it's you.
No real ahas, because I mean, basically a lot of stuff you said was kind of grapple everything.
Yep.
You know, probably your biggest point is to basically be purposeful and to have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Linda McKissick. Let me tell you who Linda McKissick is. So, Linda McKissick and Jimmy McKissick, her husband, for several years in a row, were the number one profit share earners in KW. So they make well over $1 million a year just in profit share. They're very smart individuals, and I kid you not. I remember going to one of the very first family reunions with Eric, and we wanted to go to a wealth building class, and I thought, oh, that's really smart. Let's go to a wealth building class. I want to know how to build wealth. And so we walked in and we sat down, and I looked around and I said, where's the instructor? All I saw at the front was this little, short, stubby-looking man in jeans and a blazer. And I thought, well, for sure, that couldn't be the instructor. You know, somebody that builds wealth, I'm sure he's going to have, a $2,000 suit on, and his hair would be done perfectly, and he'd have nice shoes. And, well, wouldn't you know it, the class is about to start, and here comes Jimmy with his little Texas accent and his little hillbilliness, and I'm thinking, is this the guy that's going to run the class? Sure enough, that's who it was. So he started to tell us about his life. And so he started out close to bankruptcy and couldn't get it together and was trying to develop properties and do all this stuff. And he found a builder who said, I'll invest in you. I'll give you your half of the first flip we do. So I'll pay you. I'll pay for you. And we'll do the flip together. You'll pay me back at the end, and then you can take that capital to go forward. And that's what he did. And that's how he started. And at the time when I saw him, he had 120 rental properties, all paid for. So they were incomes, stream of income for him. Their profit share is like ridiculous, $1 million plus. They're in several market centers. They're in parts of regions. But the story started with a man that was about to file bankruptcy and didn't have two nickels to rub together. And he just found somebody that believed in him. And I was blown away at what my thought in my head was, what wealth would be, and what it actually was, and how humble he was, and how giving he was, and how many times he's done that same exact thing that guy did for him for other people to get them kick-started, to get their businesses going, so that he could make millionaires out of people the way he was a millionaire. And so the pay it forward thing really touches me. And those two people, Linda and Jimmy, do nothing but pay it forward in this company. I'll talk about something else now. Okay. So, make it happen. How do you create a personal plan and make the process your focus? It's a little hard doing this with just one person because it's kind of like on Dennis to answer all the questions. Anybody want to chime in? Can they hear me? Can they respond to me? Anybody? Am I showing my age? That's right. I think there's some old people on there too, except Kelly and Chris. Chris isn't old either. And there's Rachel. Oh, you online poo-poo heads. I'm only teasing them. We love you guys too. Okay. Well, then I'm gonna skip the questions because I don't think it's fair that just Dennis answers them. Fill them out. Answer those questions. You can. Amal can answer. Well, you haven't done the whole class. What? She's so cute. Let's see. How do you time block to get your focus? I know, that's why I'm asking you. See, I figured I would ask her the question that she would hate the most. Time blocking, guys, it's super important. Sometimes it's hard, though. It's hard to time block, especially like, when things happen. But you have to find ways to do it, because if you're not consistent in your lead generation, I promise you the ebb and flow will kill you in real estate, and you'll get out. I had some agent Drew say to me the other day, I'm sick and tired of having 6 closings in a month and then nothing for 2 months. He said, I can't live like that anymore. And again, that goes back to consistency in your activities. Oh, your 411s. So guess what? You guys are all going to do 411s. Page 18. So, what is a 411? Dennis? 4 weeks, 1 month, 1 year. And I think it should be a 114 because I think it starts with the annual and goes backwards to the weekly. But they wanted to call it a 411. So when you do your 411, you have to start with the end in mind. So you have to find out what your annual goal is. What do I want to do in transactions? Transaction number, GCI, volume, money in a bank account, vacation, whatever it is that is your goal, you put them on your annual goals. And then you need to break it down and find out what has to happen monthly in order for those things to appear. So if you're, and for the most round numbers, if you wanted to do 24 transactions in a year, you would have to do 2 a month, right? In order to make that happen. What would you have to do weekly in order to make the monthly goal happen? Well, you'd have to do at least 2 transactions in a month. I would front load them and do them week 1 and week 2 if you could. But if you had to do 1 in week 3 or both in week 4, it wouldn't make a difference as long as you did them. But then what are the activities you would need to do to make the closings happen? So what's the lead generation techniques? How many notes would you have to write? How many pop-bys would you have to write in order to make the closing happen? If it was something like an annual vacation, let's say you're going to go to, I don't know, on a cruise, and it's going to cost you $4,000 to go on a cruise. How much would you need monthly for that? And how much would that break down to weekly? And that's how you would figure out your 401. So take a few minutes and figure out some of the annual goals that we'd like to do and break them down monthly and then break them down weekly. I'll give you guys about 5 minutes. Okay. Are you guys done with your 411? Do you know where you're going? Is anybody having any problems with the 411? Okay. Thanks, Dennis. Woo! Somebody want to talk?
Hey, Sheila, it's Rachel.
Hey, Rachel.
So I did my 401, but I don't know if I'm like underselling myself or overselling myself. So I wanted to tell you my numbers.
Sure, let's go.
For my annual, I said 1,400 contacts, for the year, and then I did 20 closings in the year, and that was the one I was iffy about.
You said 400 contacts?
1,400
Okay. So
for the year.
you're breaking that down to a little over 100 contacts
Per month.
right?
But I didn't I just didn't know if I was like underselling or overselling myself as far as those numbers.
Okay, so if you were to take Bold, which is a course that we do in KW, and it focuses on helping you get your business going and actually be active in getting clients, what they recommend for you to do is 20 contacts a day, or you can do a Bold 100, so you do 100 contacts in a day. So I've done a couple of Bold 100s. So that being said, if you had to equate that to what you just said, I definitely think 1,400 contacts in a year is absolutely doable, without a doubt.
Okay.
I actually think you might be maybe shortchanging yourself if you're looking to build your business based on how many contacts you make. Now, if you do business based off of how many referrals you're looking for, you might be a little bit more specific if you're tapping into like your soccer group and the people that you know here and tapping into that.
Okay.
So then you could do referrals, and depending upon how many closings you want, so let's just say you wanted, for argument's sake, 24 closings, I would say that you would want somewhere in the vicinity of 35 referrals, because not every referral is going to actually turn out to be something. You have to account for the fallout rate, if you will. So it just depends on what you're looking at. But 1,400 contracts is absolutely doable. I think you're actually not shooting high enough with that.
Part of my number choice was just based on my situation, having to be in Washington for 2 months. And so I figured I wasn't going to get a ton done. Like, I'll obviously make contacts, but as far as like obviously listing appointments and closings and previewing homes, that kind of stuff is not going to pick up for me until I get there.
Right. And again, it's going to be depending upon how you do your business, whether you're doing your business based off of contacts, which would be somebody new that you don't know, or somebody that you're introduced to that you would have a conversation about real estate and then get their information to put them in your database. So that's what a contact would be. So if you're talking about building your business that way, then you'll need more contacts. But if you're building your business around referrals, you'll probably need less contacts, just better contacts. So you need to tap into people that are, as Buffini would say, you're walking, talking billboards. So people who are raving fans or that really think you're great. And that doesn't mean that they have had to have a transaction with you through a buy or a sell. One of my biggest raving fans in Jacksonville, North Carolina, was somebody that I rented a house to. He ended up sending me 7 buyers. So, you never know where that person is going to come from.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for interacting with me. Now I feel so alone. Me and Dennis, we're not by ourselves. Yay!
You're welcome.
With me switching the time and all the snow, and it doesn't usually go this way, I promise. It's a little bit easier. Don't forget contracts class starts Tomorrow. Guess who you have tomorrow for the first hour? Yeah! You want to know me? It's going to be fun. Guess what we're going to talk about? Behavioral styles. And how to interact with them. I'm going to teach you some really cool things tomorrow. If you guys really want to learn how to change your life, show up tomorrow for the first hour, at least. What I'm going to teach you tomorrow is going to change how you look at people for the rest of your life. I kid you not. Not even a joke. Okay, awesome. So it talks about knowing your numbers. You're going to hear that from me all the time. Know your numbers, know your numbers, know your numbers. Know what you want to do, what you are doing, and what is the delta between them. Like right now, I'm down 7 people for the month. So I need 7 more people to hit my goal for the month. If anybody wants to help me, I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there, just saying. And then know your conversion rate. So my conversion rate is high. I have a 1 out of 2 conversion rate on recruits, where the standard is 4 to 1. So for every 4 recruits you sit with, you recruit 1. For me, it's 2 to 1. So for every 2 people I sit with, I get 1, which is really high. So know your conversion rates on your listings and your buyers for your buyer consultations. It does want you to calculate them here. Obviously, we did Ignite in a very short amount of time, so I don't really think that you'll have the ability to really calculate your conversion rates. And so there are scripts on page 29 for you guys. Are you using red? Oh, okay. Okay, good. So they want us to do a script off? It says optional. Optional. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to photocopy these pages or scan and email them to you so that you know what the scripts are that they would want you to fill in there, so that we don't have to go through them, because I promised you that you would be done before 3. And I'm going to stick to my promise. So congratulations, you guys. You have made it through Ignite. I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your own lives and your business to care enough about yourselves to do something like this. But I want some feedback, please, on how it went. And you guys got an evaluation sheet for each one of the instructors. Please fill them out and send them to me. That's super important. The only way we can get better at doing anything that we do here is if we know what we're not doing well. And if you guys have any questions about anything that you've learned or anything that we've gone over, I'm always available, except after 8:30 at night. I'm sleeping. But if you want to call me at 4:30 in the morning, I'll answer the phone for you. No problems. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. Bye-bye. See you guys.